Karen Carpenter is an emotional sharpshooter. When she sings a song, it goes past the meaning of the words and hits you in the spine. It's a feeling of someone just knowing the fullness of the human experience. There's a sense of humor in what she sings, but also a sense of tragedy. And I think that's the confounding thing about her, is through just how she interpreted a song, she found all angles on a feeling. And vocal training can't teach that. There's just something is not just sensitive about her, but comprehensively emotionally intelligent about her.
I think one of the things that surprised me the most in talking to Karen when I first started talking to her on the phone was, first of all, she had this very, don't know why I was surprised, but very low kind of tone to her speaking voice, as she did with her, beautiful alto singing voice. But that kind of took me off guard. And then she kind of talked like she was one of the guys, and very kind of abrupt and blunt and sometimes even a little salty. But it was like that, you see this kind of prim and proper angelic voice person on the stage, you don't expect to have a conversation that sounds like that. But it was kind of endearing in a way. And I felt like I was really getting to experience her and not the stage person or the persona, but Karen. As I said, it was kind of endearing to find out, that Karen was letting me see a different side of her than most people would see if they were watching her sing or hearing her interviewed. And I know that I kind of appreciated her kind of tomboyish approach to things, but it would not surprise me if people tried to change her image to fit a mold that they thought was more palatable for the kind of music that she was making and the kind of audience that would attract. I mean, it's pretty obvious. People have been told time and time again that they needed to change their hair, change their body, change their name. I mean, it's ridiculous, but I'm sure that was something that she encountered. And it's very crazy making to feel like you're having to live kind of a schizoid life where you're one person with one group of people and another person with another group of people. And I think it's really important to be able to integrate who you are and be your most authentic self, no matter who you're with or where you are. I think that's good mental health.
In pop music, people aren't used to the singer being behind a giant drum kit, especially if it's a female singer. They want to see that vocalist out front. They want to be able to connect with whoever is singing those lyrics, those words, to see their face. And if you're sitting behind a giant drum kit and behind huge cymbals flopping around, that's going to be difficult. But that desire versus perhaps Karen's desires to have something to do with her hands, to feel comfortable, to feel like a musician, to feel like somebody who was a part of the band and not their only emissary out in front of it, I think is one of the things that created tremendous tension and a kind of cognitive dissonance for her as the band kept getting bigger and bigger. And I think all of that, sort of pressure to move up front and to basically be exposed to the world and be the focal point was a lot to bear.
I was going to ask too, do you find sometimes the trappings of success, that constant demand for the public spotlight that you have to be in, is it something that you regret?
Very seldom. I think it's one thing, when you first start out and you say, I gotta get a hit record, you have no idea what is following. I mean, you really can't comprehend. But every now and then, if you're really tired out, you can just want to sit and not be constantly confronted with something. But on the whole, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
I think the problem is they were wholesome, and people associated wholesomeness with weakness. All of rock history, if you go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, is a tribute to the power of masculinity. They were dubbed sentimental, but in fact, most rock and roll music is sentimental. Who has ever said about Boston's more than a feeling, this is too sentimental for me. Who's ever said about Journey's Don't Stop Believin', this is too sentimental for me, even though they're literally about the sensation of a feeling. And that's what Carpenter's music is about too. But because that was such a feminine voice, because it was such an empathetic voice, because it conveyed, vulnerability, it was seen as a little bit embarrassing and as a little bit square, when in fact, it's just too much for some people.
I think it's hard to be a sibling act in pop music. I think that they certainly broke the mold in many respects, and so many artists since then have kind of commented on that. But to be like a brother and sister pair in pop music is confounding and confusing for people. And I think that their familial closeness and their kind of smiling and kind of bowl cut, matching bowl cut look, the kind of sameness to it confused people and made people feel like they weren't cool, or at least not cool in the way that artists were expected to present themselves as kind of authentic iconoclasts during the late 60s and early 70s. And so I think that sort of accounted for the goody four-shoes image. They were starting out disadvantaged, coming from that position of being a brother-sister duo. But beyond that, singing sappy ballads laced with oboes probably didn't help that image very much, even though I think that they were definitely serious musicians who wanted to make kind of mixed genre contributions to popular music. In the end, I think that that level of niceness, the kind of sheen to the act itself, ended up alienating them from fans who are more countercultural in their inclinations, and trying to do mixed genre albums or doing something like Calling Occupants later in the 70s just ended up being really confusing for people. It ended up feeling hokey because it was like their hokiness was predetermined at that point. I think the Carpenters doing their best to profess that they enjoyed drinking wine in Rolling Stone or magazines like People, or talking about how, marijuana should be legal, that kind of thing, didn't do much or couldn't do much to sort of change the direction of how people were viewing them at that particular point, especially because the music itself didn't change dramatically or radically in 1974, around the time that they were doing things like the Rolling Stone interview and trying to be more sort of forthcoming about who they were as young adults and their kind of not so squeaky clean selves.